Catherine Joy Perry was born on March 24, 1985 in Gainesville, Florida. She spent several years of her childhood in the Latvian SSR, where her father worked as a Christian missionary. Growing up, she aspired to be a ballet dancer, and at the young age of 14, joined the National Latvian Ballet. She would return to the U.S. at age 17, continuing to successfully dance until she enrolled at Florida State University. It's there where she was noticed by cameras attending FSU football games along Jen Sturger. She used this media exposure to kickstart a modeling career. It wasn't until 2013 that she announced she was signed by WWE and was sent to NXT in a managerial role. She would quickly be brought up to the main roster on January of that same year, appearing in vignettes with Rusev. Her managerial role would continue for years, successfully managing Rusev, who became her real-life husband in 2016. She would continue to work hard behind the scenes to become more than just a manager, and eventually, she had her debut match at WrestleMania 32 in a 10-woman tag team match. She would continue to progress in the ring and gradually became a wrestler on the roster, shedding the manager moniker. Over the years, the storylines she was placed in often seemed questionable, but she put a smile on her face and entertained us fans to the absolute best of her ability, despite what creative had planned for her. Lana has also dealt with a tremendous amount of hate and negativity on social media, and it has affected her mental health tremendously, as explained in her WWE Chronicle episode. But she continues to push through and glow, and despite all the haters out there are so many of us, like me, and the whole Lumberjillville community that absolutely loves and adores you, Lana. Keep on shining like the star you are. Hey y'all, welcome to Lumberjillville. Women's wrestling lives here. Now, in recent news of Lana's WWE release, I wanted to do something special, something to celebrate her WWE career. So there's no other way than to do a figure history Lumberjillville style. So here we are. Now, truth being told, I have a very sentimental spot for Lana. This goes back about 4 years when I was starting to take notice of women's wrestling in the women's division, and so was my daughter. And I started to see how special, how amazing these women are to aspiring little girls, even little boys all over. And I was watching Raw in the backseat of my parents' car with my daughter. She wasn't paying much attention to it, She was pretty young at the time, so she didn't really fully understand the product. But two things stood out, the audio and the visuals. Lana's music hit. She came out, she was dancing in her entrance. My daughter was transfixed and enamored. And from there on out, that song, Lana's entrance song, was played on repeat in my car for many months to come. And even now, my daughter will want to listen to it sometimes. So it just so happened I had all her figures already because my daughter was always drawn to Lana. Always wanted her figures whenever I showed her pictures. So I'm a huge fan of Lana. And something else that I've noticed is she has come so far from when I first started watching the women's division in her abilities in the ring. And whenever a superstar has grown in front of my eyes in the ring, it makes me love them even more. And Lana's no different. I'm so proud of how far she came, and I can't wait to see where her future goes. But with that being said, let's get started on Lana's figure history, starting with her debut figure. Battle Pack Series 34, released in 2015 with Rusev. This attire is from the May 12, 2014 edition of Raw, where Rusev and Lana confronted legend Hacksaw Jim Duggan in the ring. So let's start off with her first in the line figure, because in my opinion, this is an excellent figure of Lana and really represents the time period of her career very well. Now, the first thing I noticed when I opened this figure up is I was blown away, because the face is excellent. Now, this was way before the TrueFX face scan printing technology, and a lot of the women's faces were very cartoony, very eccentric, and not very good, but hers looks excellent here. The paint application, the face sculpt, and even this hair mold that's back into a bun, it actually looks really, really good. And as you'll see with some of her future figures, they really missed the boat on most of her scans. So it's nice to see her first one is pretty solid. Now this red suit that she has is very iconic to her character, and it really pops. The top and the bottom is removable, but there's no point in doing that. That's weird. And then taking a closer look, she does have this gold molded necklace chain, but the gold does stop as it goes around her neck, even though the mold continues. And the top of her strap there on her top is also molded, but unpainted, which is not a big deal because this is how we're going to display her. Now, what's very unique about this figure and kind of a catch-22 is she is wearing these high heels, which it can be very tough to stand her up with these, let me tell you. However, it's not impossible, like Brandy Rhodes' figure. So it's definitely manageable, and if you have a display stand, that's really how you're going to be able to get her to stand so well. But yeah, I was very blown away by her first in the line figure because they really did an excellent job here. Now let's move on. Basic Series 58, released in 2015. This attire is from the Battleground 2014 pay-per-view, which took place on July 20th, 2014 in Tampa, Florida. On this night, she accompanied Rusev when he defeated Jack Swagger via countout. Alright, so moving on to her next figure. Now, this was her first solo figure released. And I have to tell you, the quality in that face scan has dropped tremendously compared to that Battle Pack Lana. So, this has really awkward paint application here, and the face does not resemble Lana. It looks very, very bizarre. And I don't think it's just mine. I looked at pictures online, and they all pretty much look like this. But once again, at least we get that good hair sculpt. And also the suit looks great on her. We have that rubber top, rubber bottom, except this time it's blue instead of red, so it's a nice little change. And she once again has those high heels on, so it's pretty much the exact same figure as that Battle Pack Lana, except the color of the suit was changed from red to blue, and then this face scan is totally different. So, yeah, not the best, but trust me, it gets worse. Basic Series 64, released in 2016. This attire is from the August 24th, 2015 edition of Raw, where Lana accompanied Dolph Ziggler to the ring in an 8-man tag match, which saw Ziggler, Cesaro, Randy Orton, and Ryback defeating Rusev with Summer Rae, Kevin Owens, Sheamus, and The Big Show. It's important to note that Lana attacked Summer Rae on the outside of the ring during this match. Oh boy, I have to cover this one. Now, anyone that's a fan of this channel knows that way early on in the channel, this was actually the figure I chose for my very first eviction notice, which is targeted on bad women's wrestling figures. And this figure is horrible. Now, this has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Lana. As I mentioned before, she's awesome. I love her. But what makes this figure so bad is, number one, the most important thing in a figure is the face. And if you take a closer look at this face scan, that does not look like Lana one bit. It doesn't even look very feminine, to be honest with you. At least the hair mold's nice, I suppose. And also, I see what they were going with this top and this bottom, kind of being like an acid wash type look. You know, this is around the time she was following Dolph Ziggler around, kind of dating him. But instead, it literally looks like she wrapped a map, like a map around her waist here and then her upper body. And even if you go to what's underneath, it's like, oh, she's got a white top. That looks crappy because it's that sports bra mold. But you peel this back, and you could see that they actually stop painting the top as it goes behind her, and then as the straps go behind her. And obviously that necklace is half painted. And moving on down, she's got high heels on, but this time they're like the sneaker high heels. So the unfortunate thing that sucks even more about this figure, there's no peg holes. So you literally have to stand her on her own 2 feet, literally, and there's no peg holes to put a display stand underneath her. So, in my opinion, this was the worst Lana figure. One of the worst women's wrestling figures of all time, in my opinion. And like I said, I covered this in pretty deep detail early on in the channel history, but it's a part of her history, and I had to cover it. But the only good news is, it can only go up from here. Basic Series 75, released in 2017. This attire is from the Battleground 2016 pay-per-view, which took place on July 24th, 2016, in Washington, D.C. On this night, she accompanied Rusev in a successful U.S. Championship match where he retained against Zack Ryder. So now let's move on to this truly awesome basic of Lana, and this is my daughter's most played with women's wrestling figure and one of her truly favorite figures that she has. And for good reason, because this figure is awesome. Now remember, this is a basic, but it has for the most part a lot of elite articulation and a lot of detail that went into this figure. Now, taking a closer look at her face, this is a pretty good scan and the best that we've got all the way back since her first figure. That was a great scan, but the last two have been pretty terrible. So it's good to know that we got a different scan and it looks pretty good. It doesn't look spot on, but it does look pretty darn good. She has this little crown or tiara, I guess you would say, in her hair. She has this awesome hair mold where it's very curly and it's brushed over her shoulder. And she has this dress. So the dress comes with this bottom piece, which isn't as rubbery as her suit bottoms. It's more of a thinner plastic, so it's not meant to come off. And then her top is a molded top and has little elegant designs molded on throughout that top and bottom, simulating a dress, and it looks awesome. Moving down to her feet, she has that high heel mold. This time they are painted pink with straps painted on to add detail. And there are peg holes so you can stand her up on a stand. So yeah, as far as basics go, I mean, this is probably one of my favorite basics. It's definitely my daughter's favorite basic, I would say. But they did a pretty good job. Basic Series 109, released in 2020. This attire was worn on the SummerSlam 2018 kickoff show in Brooklyn, New York, where her and Rusev lost to Andrade and Zelina Vega. So this was the last series that Lana was featured in before her release from WWE. But I was super, super grateful for this release. The main reasoning? Because we finally got Lana in her ring attire, in her wrestling gear, finally, after all these releases. Now, what's pretty awesome is if you line her figures up, you can see the progression of her career. She starts out as a manager and slowly progresses to become a full-time wrestler in the roster. And that's growth that we got to see as fans right in front of our eyes. And that was pretty awesome. So I'm a big fan of finally getting her in her ring attire. Now, taking a closer look at her face, she does have that True FX printing technology here. And it looks awesome. The one thing I am going to say is there are quite a few Lanas out there. I saw quite a few on the pegs that the scan was printed on off. And it looks horrible. So you got to make sure that scan is printed on right. And if it is, it looks great. My only complaint would be I would have liked to see some kind of emotion or a smile in her face. Instead, it's kind of just a straight face. The hair mold is also cool with that high ponytail that just hangs down. Now, the attire is just all paint detail. And it's red with blue and silver accents, and it stands out. However, if you compare this to what it's really supposed to look like, it should be a little shiny, metallic. You know, the same complaint that I say time and time again about these Mattel women's figures. Like, if they would just add a shine or a gloss or a metallic to the paint application, it would add so much to the figure, and this is a prime example of that. But not comparing it to what she actually wore, it does look like a cool figure, but in my opinion, the chase stands out a little more, and I'll show you why. But we finally got Lana in ring attire, and for that, I'm grateful. Basic Series 109 Chase version, released in 2020. This blue attire was worn on the August 7th, 2018 edition of SmackDown Live, where she went up against Zelina Vega in a losing effort. It's also important to note that she wore both this and the red version of this attire quite often in the Mixed Match Challenge. So here it is, the Chase version of that 109 release, and like I mentioned, I think the blue just stands out and pops more than the red. And they also put a lot more detail in the paint application, even making like an off black color to simulate almost like a see-through mesh in her midsection. Now I am going to cover this, I'm just going to say it. She has very questionable design in the middle here. That's kind of been ridiculed on message boards and whatnot, but I don't think it was intentional, so we'll just look past it. But I really do like this blue and how it pops and stands out. I know I mentioned it before, but if we had a metallic or a shine or a gloss paint application, it would have made it stand out even more. But with that being said, the blue looks great, and I think the silver and the black accents really make it pop. And once again, we have that TrueFX face scan printing technology, and it looks awesome. And now I'm going to rank the Lana figures from my least favorite to my favorite. So at number 6, to no one's surprise, we have Basic Series 64. Now if you're a fan of this channel, if you watch some of my videos, this is kind of the antagonist to LJV. This is who I call Demon Lana in a lot of my videos. So that just shows what I think of this figure. It is not very good at all, and it doesn't even have peg holes or a figure stand, so I'm just going to set her to the side. So next, at number 5, we have Basic Series 58 in the blue suit here. I think the suit looks great and the heels are good, but that face scan, considering the Battle Pack suited figure that came out before this had a pretty good scan, they really miss a step here, and I don't think it looks too good. So at number 4, we have Basic Series 75. Now, I did mention this is one of my favorite basics, and I would say that because they really put a lot of attention to detail in this figure, and my daughter loves it. So sentimentally, obviously, it's going to be one of my favorites. However, this to me doesn't signify the strong, badass woman that Lana is, and that's why it is number 4. So at number 3, we have her debut figure in Battle Pack Series 34 in the red suit. I was shocked. I was shocked that the scan turned out as good as it did, and this figure overall is pretty solid, and that red suit is pretty darn iconic for Lana. So at number 2, Basic Series 109 regular version. Her figure in wrestling attire, the first one that she's gotten, is definitely going to be my top figure. And the only reason that number 1 is that chase version in the blue is because I feel like the blue is more iconic to her and what she wrestled in. And I think it pops more. So obviously she's had some bad, she's had some good, and she's even had a couple great figures in my opinion. But she's definitely had a wide variety. I hope you enjoyed the figure history of Lana. Now, even though she had 6 figures, unfortunately she never got an elite and she never got that perfect figure that she deserved. But that's not saying that maybe if she appears in a different promotion, she may get that perfect figure in the future. And I'm honestly excited to see where her career and where her life goes because she is an amazing woman. Now, with all the hate she gets, all the negativity she gets, the mayor of LJV asks you, hit her up with some positivity, encouragement, and let her know that we love her. So with that being said, have a great night, y'all, and stay safe. Thanks for stopping by Lumberjillville. Women's wrestling lives here.